Hey, Choose Life Nation. This is Dallas Cohen, the Rebound Coach, and you are watching or listening to another episode of the Rebound Coach Live. This is especially different because we are live streaming straight to YouTube. Normally, we stream to Facebook and then put it up on YouTube later, but here we are, YouTube folks. It is you and I today, and that's exciting all by itself. So I want to say welcome again to the Rebound Coach Live. I am Dallas Cohen, the Rebound Coach. And if you've never shared virtual space with me before, number one, I want to say thank you and welcome. I hope this is going to be a good time for us together. And we're going to talk about how to regain control of your life. And you might be like, I have control of my life, right? I think so. I think I have it in control. And if this is your first time sharing virtual space with me and you're not quite sure how this ended up on your feed or suggested live videos and you're just over here like, who are you? What is this? And why are you talking to me right now? I'm the Rebound Coach, and I am a life coach that helps people get unstuck. Specifically, I serve high achieving women of faith who've lived through betrayal or trauma or abuse and who want to reclaim territory in their relationship with themselves. And that started with my own story. I was married 10 years to a man who wanted me dead, and he almost had the opportunity to make good on that. And that didn't make a whole lot of sense for someone like me. I was raised in a good, godly home. I had Christian parents. They loved God. They loved each other. They were married for a lifetime. And they were a pretty good example of self-sacrificial love, I believe. At the same time, I was molested from the time I was 8 to the time I was 16. And that radically affects how you see yourself. Those are identity forming years. It affected how I saw God and as in a household of faith and how I related to men. So fast forward, I met the man that I married and eventually divorced. And there were definitely red flags, reasons not to be together, concerning things, right? However, I'm a praying woman. I believed God's answer was yes. And because I believed God's answer was yes, I believed that whatever came, we would outlast it, we'd overcome it. God would swoop in and save the day, and things would just be great eventually. And the trouble came right away. We didn't have like this honeymoon period. It came right away and never quite left. We got into what I call a cycle of coping and crisis. So this is where you never quite get to good or satisfied. You are walking on eggshells, trying not to upset him. You are always working on yourself, trying to make yourself a better wife. If I just pray more, if I just submit more, if I have more sex, if I just say yes to everything he's asking, then he'll be kind, he'll stop abusing me, etc. Except that never happens. The carrot just moves further down the road and you are just constantly chasing something that never comes. And then there's this big crisis that blows up everything. So you're trying very carefully to like put your house of cards together, and then something goes boom and blows everything up. And you spend a lot of time rebuilding and trying to put that house of cards back up again until the next crisis. And we did that for the larger part of 9 years, over 9 years, almost 10. And everything came to this screeching halt. End of 2019, beginning of 2020, he left for another woman. He'd been a serial adulterer all this time, but he had left for another woman. And I found out like the day after, him and that woman had been plotting my murder. And that's crazy. That's literally the record scratch moment when you're watching the movie. It's like everything stops and you have a lot of questions. I had a lot of questions. How did I end up here? How is this my life? And of course, you have important decisions to make. And so the fastest way I could tell you is through a series of absolutely divine, supernatural events. I'm here. I'm alive. My children are with me. We're alive together, continuing to grow and learn and unlearn all the patterns that got us to that place and growing into life. I could allow the identity that my ex-husband had planned for me and the one I had agreed to, quite frankly, tell me who I was, how I was allowed to live, I was allowed to express my faith, express my womanhood. Um, I had a death date. That identity told me how many days I had left on the planet. Or I could choose life. So I wrote a book. The name of the book is I Choose Life: Rewrite Your Love Story and Change Your Legacy. And number one, if you are into Law and Order SVU, if you're into like whodunits and you like receipts, this is the book for you. If you have lived through betrayal, trauma, or abuse, if anything in my story resonated with you and with your story, this book is for you. If you love someone who's been through betrayal or trauma or abuse, this book is for them. You can find this at thereboundcoach.com/book. That is thereboundcoach.com/book. You can get one of these physical copies that I can write a love note in and sign it for you and mail it to you. Or you can get an ebook copy or a copy from Amazon. All that information is at thereboundcoach.com/book. Okay. How to regain control in your life. So, this topic sparked from a few conversations I've had recently where I literally hear women say things like, I feel like my life is not my own. I was inviting this person to a gathering, and her response was like, so and so's got this, and somebody's got to watch the baby, and that affects where I can go and what I can do, and I feel like my life is not my own. And if you've ever been in a conversation and something that somebody said just kind of raised up out of their stream of voice, just kind of raised up and looked at you like, that's how that felt. I feel like my life is not my own. And I just wondered how common it is that women feel, and I'm sure men also can feel like their life is not their own, that they're just on a treadmill that they're not even turning. Someone else is deciding what their choices are. And if you have lived through an abusive marriage, specifically emotional, spiritual, financial abuse, verbal abuse, even, you may very much feel like your life is not your own. Definitely physical abuse as well. But in those other areas, it's not always so obvious that there's an abuse dynamic happening. You just feel like your life is not your own, right? Also, I heard recently, this is just nonstop. Like my life is just nonstop. There's no breaks. I can't breathe. It won't stop. And this woman in particular wasn't talking about an abuse dynamic, just her life, her responsibilities, and that she was always on, and there was never a pause and never a break and never a breath, right? Someone else I spoke to is a caretaker for a family member. And I understand that because my mother was terminally ill, and I know what it is to be that caretaker. And caretakers are always on. If there's a village, and sometimes if there's not a village really, and sometimes even if there is, that caretaker doesn't feel like they can rest. And that was the case for the person I was speaking to. They were a caretaker and just feeling like even when I'm not with that person, I'm always thinking about that person and are they okay? And what can I stop and how can I help and what can I do? And it's the same thought, like not having control of your life, not having control of your choices, not having control of your emotions, not having control of where you're putting your mental focus, just not having control. And that happens to a lot of us. But the beautiful thing is, we don't have to stay there. We can regain control of ourselves, of our lives, of our futures, of our emotions, of our joy. We can regain control. So I want to talk about just a few things. And another thing that's really important to think about, if you might say, well, no, I have control of my life. Something that happens in abuse dynamics often, especially marriages, is women feel like their world revolves around their abuser. And even in trying to get free, it's about, I need to understand him. I need to understand his mind. I need to understand his childhood. I need to understand where he's coming from and why he is doing the things he's doing. And, how he got to this place and what might he do next. And in a survivor's role, you're doing that because you need to survive, and that abuser, that abusive husband, has become your very center. And that's intentional, right? The narcissistic abuse dynamic, the whole thing, that's intentional. But even if narcissism isn't in play, right, having another person be your focal point is and can be all consuming. It's all consuming. There's no space for you. There's no space for the things you enjoy. There's no space for you to grow as a human being. You are just all consumed in this other person. And I would even go further to say, in faith-based marriages, there's an idea that that is a woman's role, to be consumed in a husband and kids, even if there's not an abuse situation happening, just being consumed in what they want, what they need. How can you help them? And that's your role as a wife and a mom. And I just want to say that you're a person outside of your roles. You're a human being. You were a human being before you were a wife. You were a human being before you became a mother. You still have identity outside of what other people need from you. And I would say this too: you have needs of yourself. You need you. You need you. I heard someone say, I want to become whole. I want to become mentally, emotionally, and spiritually healthy for my kids. Need to be healthy for my kids. And now some ladies use that, even in the physical health sense, they use that as like, need to be healthy for my kids. I want to see my grandchildren, or I want to play with my kids outside, whatever it is. Because I think underlying is like, yourself is not a good enough reason. Wanting to get healthy because you want to be healthy is not a good enough reason. Wanting to be healed so you can be healed is not a good enough reason. And I've prayed prayers like that. I've been like, God, do it because he needs this. Surely you like him, you want to help him, not because you want to help me. Like, that's not good enough of a prayer reason. But you'll help him, right? You'll do it for them. And I think it's an insult to God. I think that's an insult to God when we do that. And I think it's an insult to ourselves. Definitely an insult to ourselves. I think it's also an insult to God. He made us in his image. We are all image bearers. He made us wonderfully, fearfully and wonderfully we have been made. And for us to say, I know I'm not as important to you as someone else. Could you do it for someone else? Or I will make a good decision based on someone else's value instead of my own. Like, oh, for my kids because they have value, or oh, for my husband because they have value, but not for myself. You have value too, all by yourself. Even if it didn't benefit anyone else, it's still worth it for you. So that's something to think about as a priority. Other folks, you might make work the priority, or accomplishing something, or making a positive difference, which is noble, but also ill-placed. The priority can be, working on my shoulds. Priorities can be just, I'm going to be the best human I can be because that's my opportunity as a creation of the Most High God, right? Like, that's enough. And that includes things like doing good work. That includes things like being a good friend, a good daughter, a good wife, a good husband, a good son, a good brother, a good sister, a good mom, right? It includes all of those roles, but those roles don't lead. You lead in the role. The role doesn't lead you, right? So often we can find ourselves living us instead of us living life. We filled our days, our schedules with so many responsibilities, and we just keep taking them on, and it runs us ragged. It absolutely runs us ragged. And so here are a couple of steps. Oh, and underneath there, so before I get to action steps, underneath that running ragged, there's a couple of heart motivations. This is not exhaustive. These are just a few reasons, heart motivations that could be underneath it. Number one, are you just people pleasing, right? We need to impress somebody. We want to get them to like us. So we're going to take on all these extra responsibilities and give our perceived opinion, right? So we don't know what they actually think. We know what they say and do, but we don't know what they actually think of us. So we fill in the blanks, and then we're going to work toward improving their opinion of us, except we don't know what that is. We just think we know what it is, right? So we work and overwork to change someone's opinion of us, right? People pleasing, that's one option. Trying to prove that we are right, or that we are good, or that we are enough. So again, that goes back to someone's opinion, but normally it's a childhood someone. So like we're trying to prove to our parents that we're worth it, or good enough, or good, or a teacher, or someone in most of the time that's someone in our childhood. We're trying to prove we are right. We're trying to prove we are good. We're trying to prove we are enough. So we work, and we give our control to someone else. We let responsibilities tell us where we can go, what we can have, what we can do, who we can spend time with, if we deserve rest, right? All that. We let our responsibilities run us, and life live us instead of us living life. So that's the second reason. Number 3, trying to control what we can't control. So this happens a lot, and this is fear-based stuff. This is where we're trying to get ahead of circumstances that we don't have control over. So for the caretaker I was speaking to, who says, even when I'm not with that person in my family that I care for, I'm always thinking about them, and thinking about, what if something happens? What if something happens? And while at first glance you hear that and go, oh man, that caretaker really cares for their family member. Yes. And also that is a preoccupation with. So, and it's understandable when you care, you love somebody who's going through something. If you're their caretaker, I was my mother's caretaker, not her only caretaker, not even her main, but it was all hands on deck all the time. And so I know what it is to be concerned. I was concerned with my mother's health when I wasn't with her. However, that can become, I can't control someone else's health, right? I'm not in control of that. So for me to be preoccupied with, I don't know if she's okay, what if something's happening, it takes on extra responsibilities that I can't do anything about. So when I have a responsibility, and I have an urge, and I have a drive in my heart and in my mind to change something, fix something, avoid something that I really don't have control over, that is an anxiety that never quenches. How can it? How can it? If you're away from that person, you're worried about them. And then when you're with them, you're worried about them. And you're trying to prevent a situation that you can't control. And you're trying to anticipate something that you don't know when it's going to happen again. And you don't know how bad it's going to be. You don't know. What we have right now, what we have today, is the present. This is what we have. We don't have tomorrow, and we definitely don't have yesterday. We only have right now. We only have control of our hearts and our minds and our spirits right now. So what decision will you make with today? What decision will you make with today? You can decide whether I'm going to be worried about what I cannot even control, the future that is not here yet, the past that has already happened and I can't change, right? We don't want to feel the negative feelings again, but we're in control of our feelings. We're not in control of the circumstances. We're not in control of anyone else and any of their choices. We're not in control of their bodies, like none of it. None of it. We can only control us, our mind, our heart, our emotions, our bodies. We can control those things right here in this present moment. We can't even speak for tomorrow, right? So when you're agonizing and angsting over things you cannot control, understand that you pay a price. We pay a price in our minds and our hearts and our bodies for that kind of prolonged anxiety driven decision. We pay for that with our health. We pay for that with our peace. And we keep making decisions that perpetuate the anxiety because you get more of what you focus on. So if you're focusing on negative things that could happen, possibilities, we create them. And that's horrible, but it's true and it's a law and can't change the law. You can work within it though. You can make a difference in how you're responding to the world around you and how you choose to show up in your life. You can make that choice, and I encourage you to do so. So, how do I take back control of my life, Dallas? Okay, I want control back. What do I do? Right. Number one, decide when. This is a when. So, decide when you're going to nourish yourself and place boundaries there. Decide when. So, if that is in the morning, I'm going to give myself 30 minutes of me time. Now, hear what I did not say. I did not say I'm going to do a 30-minute devotional quiet time. Why do you say that, Dallas? Quiet time is so wonderful. Yes, it is. And by quiet time, I mean devotion. That's Christianese for reading the Bible and praying, okay, and journaling perhaps. So why didn't I say that? That's devotion time is way better than just quiet time. Is it? Is it? Developing your relationship with God is crucial. It is absolutely crucial. Absolutely crucial. But deciding when you're going to nourish you like you yourself. Does reading the Bible nourish you? Oh, yeah, spiritually. Absolutely. That may not be the same as just, I need to think my thoughts out loud. I need to hear the sound of my own voice, not talking to another person. I need to breathe. Like, I just need to breathe. I need to not have a task. For 30 minutes, I need to not have something to do. Like, how about that? I think, well, can't say for everyone. I think sometimes when we scroll to avoid something, to avoid a task, I think we just need a break from having something to do all the time, 24/7. From the time you wake up to the time you go to bed, I have stuff to do. I think the scrolling and the mindless stuff that we do is our minds and hearts and bodies screaming for a break. Please. My little girl said today, she says, I did all my to-do list is all done and I have free time. I was like, wow, how wonderful. Free time is so great. And I thought today, and I said to her, I said, my list of to-dos is not done and I do not have free time. And I had to think about it. My to-do list is never done. Like, that's the reality. There is no done. So when shall I rest? When will I take time for myself? And my little girl wanted to cuddle. And so I put dinner on low and went and cuddled with her. And I thought it was going to be 5 minutes. It was 10. It was glorious 10. So, taking that time, deciding when you are going to nourish you and putting boundaries around it. From this time to this time, I'm putting the phone down. I'm turning the TV off. I'm telling all the people around me they don't have access for this 5-10 minutes, whatever it is. I'm going to spend that time nourishing me. Or I'm going to take myself out once a month to go do something for me. We get sitters for everything else, right? When someone, when work says you got to travel, we find sitters, right? So you can find a sitter for your own self, to give your own self a day. Okay. So that's number one. Decide when you will nourish yourself and place boundaries there. Number two, have a forced stop. If you ever had a computer issue and you had to force stop an app, right? This is the same thing. It's like you are having a problem, we got to shut you down, right? Have a forced stop, even if that's 5 minutes or 5 minutes at a time, right? Decide where to invest your time and your energy. Where will you invest your time and your energy? And know that that's what's happening. So every time, every space you spend time in, like if you're spending time here right now with me, you're investing into yourself, which is beautiful. And I'm proud of you just for being here. If you're watching the replay, say replay. If you're watching live, go ahead and put it in the comments. Um, you're investing into yourself, and I'm proud of you just for doing that. You can do that 5 or 10 minutes at a time, and understand that you are investing your time into something or someone. And then that helps you decide, like, if this is a healthy place to invest my time and energy or not. Is doom scrolling, the buzz phrase, is doom scrolling a good place to invest your time and energy? No, it's probably not. No one feels good after doom scrolling, right? You get all your dopamine and then you're like, oh man, I just spent an hour doing that, right? And it literally goes by that fast. And you're like, you just wake up and be like, whoa, what just happened? Whole hour went by and all you did was scroll and watch little bits of media. Okay, so do a force stop. And number three, reclaim your or release. That's what it says. I'll be in reclaim mode, y'all. Release your mental burdens to him. So if you're living with anxiety and if you are very concerned about different aspects of life that you cannot control, if you're spending your time and energy trying to stop something you have no power to stop, or start something or control something or avoid something you have no power over, if you're living in that anxiety, you can release your burdens to him, to God. What does that look like? What does that mean? That means when the thought comes, because it will, you can retrain your response. So let's say, my mother was terminally ill. Let's say I was worried about her, and, that thought would rise. I could say, oh my gosh, I'm so worried. What if something bad happens? And then I can play out all the scenarios of all the bad things that could happen and feel all the feelings of things that haven't happened. Or I could choose life. What does choosing life look like? That means when the thought rises, I say, Lord, I surrender my mom and her condition to you. I surrender her sickness, her illness, whether or not you're going to heal her, how you might heal her or not. I'm going to just surrender that to you. Whatever the situation is, you can surrender it. And I highly recommend that you do, because worrying won't change it. And if we're powerless to change it, there is someone who can. His name is Jesus, and we can surrender that to him. This is when we're recording this today. This is Holy Week. This is the week between or of the resurrection of Christ. I'm about to say something else. Passover is later, and I'm happy to talk about Passover when we get a little closer to it. But this is the week that folks remember Christ and him crucified and risen again. And what a gift. What a gift that the things that we're not in control of, he has control of, and we can pass it off. We can literally pass it off and say, you know what? I don't got this, but you got this. And I choose to release it to you. And I want you to practice that. I want you to practice that as worries come and attack you, because they do. You can and be mindful of where you feel that stress building in the body. It does have a location. So sometimes you feel it on your head. People go, oh my goodness, I'm so concerned. I get anxious, right? They feel it up here. Or sometimes it's here, or sometimes it's here in the shoulders. Sometimes it's in the back. Wherever it is that you're holding your stress, you can physically lifted off, I give that to you, God. Physically lifted off, I give that to you, God. I surrender that. I surrender my mom and her body and her situation and her life to you. I surrender whatever it is, whatever family member, if there's a family member that's ill, if you are in an abusive situation and you're not sure what to do, right? There's lots of things you can control in that circle, but lots of things you can't. So I surrender my husband's moods, whatever that is, because you can't control any of that. And trust me, how do I know that? How do I know that? Look back at all the times you've tried to control it. Look back at everything you did trying to not make him upset or to make him change or to make things better. And what happened? That tells you what you can control. Now, the beautiful thing is, because you can't control it, also means you don't have to concern yourself with it. You can release it to God and deal with what you can control, which is way more effective in getting things done. So, I want to share a clip with you from the recent sanctuary experience, which just happened earlier this month. It was fabulous. And I want you to hear about Diana.
Hi, I'm Diana, and this is my first time at Sanctuary Experience, and it's been wonderful. I really didn't know what to expect. I've never been to anything like this before, and I didn't know that there's a little girl inside of me that wants to come out. And so they began through the teaching and the tools given to us, a process that going to take me a while to go through, but it's been really good because I want to walk out who I am, what he meant for me to be. And so I want to encourage you to come because it's going to really speak to you also and just touch your heart. We need you here. You won't be sorry.
That was so beautiful. So it was Diana's first sanctuary experience this month. It was her very first, and just like she said, she didn't realize there was a little girl inside of her that needed to be heard. And for any woman watching today, there's a little girl inside of you that would want to be heard and seen and loved and nurtured. And you have the opportunity to do that. I want to invite you to learn more about Sanctuary Experience at thereboundcoach.com/sanctuary. That is thereboundcoach.com/sanctuary. The next opportunity is September 20th through 22nd, 2024. That's your next opportunity to join us at Sanctuary Experience. There are other events in the pipeline. I'm actually really, really excited to share something with you soon once the information is up. I cannot wait to share it with you. It is something we have not done before, and it's going to be great. But in the meantime, check out thereboundcoach.com/sanctuary. I am so glad that you're here today. Thank you for coming to spend time with me. It has been an honor, and I will see you next week, either right here on YouTube or back on Facebook. We'll figure that out later. But until next time, choose life.